Howdy, my name is William.
And I'm Mason.
And we are On Topic,
the podcast where we discuss interesting things with interesting people.
We realize that none of you have ever seen or heard from us before, and accordingly we have to qualify ourselves as interesting people. And so before we begin discussing our topic, where our actual qualification will really come in as our wit and banter elucidate themselves, we will give you a super brief introduction of ourselves and our backgrounds so that you know who's talking. Go ahead.
Cool, yeah. So, again, like I said, my name is Mason. I am a software engineer by trade, loosely involved in philosophy thanks to you. And yeah, generally, I think the most pertinent thing in my life that qualifies me for such topics that we're going to discuss is probably just my tie to mathematics. I'm very much so a mathematics hobbyist. And yeah, in terms of like a rough outline of my philosophy, I am an atheist. I am a severe reductionist in almost every facet.
Terminal.
Yeah, terminal reductionist. Which again, I will try and make that not annoying to listen to because I realize it can be. But yeah, that's me.
Surely these people will be entertained by your infinitesimal reductions.
We'll see. We'll see.
You're studying mathematics. I don't know that you can just call yourself a hobbyist. You're more than a hobbyist. You're a scholar.
Fair enough, but yeah, I mean,
an academic.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am a philosophy minor. Also, I'm a music major. We're going to disregard that for this instance until it becomes pertinent, which it may eventually. But ironically, music is the money-making thing, and philosophy is the side passion that I would love to dive into and will absolutely do so should the opportunity present itself. I've recently started writing. I have a Substack called First Principled, which you should go read. I am, to offer my own philosophical orientation, I am a theist. I am a hardcore Presbyterian at the moment. I'm a hardcore Christian. I'm still figuring out my exact denominational alignment. I'm definitely Reformed. I am either Presbyterian or Reformed Baptist, depending on where I land. Depending on where I land on paedobaptism as I dive into the scripture. With that said, I feel like probably all of my other philosophical axioms and positions can kind of be deducted from my faith, but I'm a hardcore objectivist. I believe in objective truth and reality and morality and beauty and all of these things. I think there is a standard that is outside of the subjective or the perceived that dictates everything. Let's see. What else is relevant? I'm a soul guy. I believe in the soul, which we're going to get into for today's topic. Yeah, I feel like everything can really be determined out of the faith.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can concur. That is absolutely what will happen. Our general topic for today is going to kind of center roughly around consciousness.
Yeah.
That's the, outlining idea that we're going to try and tackle today. But again, we're just going to try and stay on topic and we'll see where that leads us today.
And this is our first, not our first recorded podcast, but the first one we're going to give to you. So this will not be as organized as they will be eventually. We're very much kicking things off and figuring things out. So if it's scattered but entertaining, then stick with us and it'll only get less scattered as time goes on. And if it's scattered and not entertaining, then stick with us and it'll only get more entertaining as time goes on.
Cool. Well, you want to start us off with something?
Yeah, sure. So let's kick off with the mind-body problem. This is a classic philosophical problem. The question is, where does the mind align with the body, as is implied by the name? We have a couple main central. I really should have brushed up on this beforehand. It's summer. It's been a while, but there are a couple main orienting positions. I guess there are three. So I'm going to start with two.
Okay.
So there is dualism, which is the idea that they are separate. And then there are a couple different versions of non-dualism.
I see.
Of
Okay.
thinking that the mind is nothing more than what's here. So dualism usually will sort of imply a soul, but doesn't necessarily. The most common kind is Cartesian dualism, which is like the purest distinction of there is your conscious mind, your entity, your soul, your being, and then there's your body, and they are sort of tethered to each other. They function as a sort of unit, but they're not like connected in a,
Right.
On the other side, I think probably the most common one would be human animalism, which is a very funny.
Human animalism is an interesting name.
Yeah. But the idea is that that all of your consciousness, all of your mind, all of these things are here in the body. A common critique of animalism is that in the writings that lay out the idea, they talk about there being a human animal here everywhere that you are, necessarily like a biconditional. Like if you, then there is, wherever you are, there is a human animal, and everything that you do, a human animal is doing. And the language that they use to lay it out almost implies a sort of dualism, because it's distinguishing between you, the thing observing the human animal, and the human animal that's there.
Gotcha.
But they don't take it. The people laying it out did not saw it as an alternative to Cartesian dualism.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And take all this with a grain of salt. I am only a philosophy minor. This is what I remember from last semester.
Yeah. Of those that you mentioned, I think the human animalism is probably the closest. But I really, again, you yourself mentioned that the wording and the arguments that they presented are a little bit strange.
Funky. There's a branch off to the right, off of the, what is it, the single view? I can't remember what the opposite of dualism is. The non-dualist views. There are like two branches, and you get your like animalism, and then there are two branches of that. And I can't remember what they are. But then there's another one that I think is what more people opt for, and I can't remember what that one is.
Yeah.
The animalism just stuck with me because it's so weird.
Right. I think whichever one is most like, I guess, collinear with evolutionarily, like just the idea of evolution, and that all coming from just evolution, survival of the fittest. I think whichever one, I don't know what term you would bring to that, but that's probably the one I would prescribe to the most.
Well, I guess, so question number one then would be, what is consciousness?
So this is one thing I was trying to figure out earlier in preparation for the podcast, and I don't think
for the podcast.
I don't think it's fully definable. Which again, this is going to happen a lot. I am reductionist. I don't think you can really truly define anything, but I think consciousness, even like colloquially,
in this case,
is really difficult
inclined to
define.
agree with you. I don't think we can necessarily, like scientifically, I don't think we can get to the bottom of consciousness.
It's so multifaceted that I don't think you can put to words and actually encapsulate all of what consciousness means.
Right. Well, so then how do we determine if our understanding of the thing that we're talking about is the same? Like, are we talking about the same thing?
I think we all have kind of an inherent
I'm inclined to
understanding
agree with you.
of what consciousness is for convenience.
Let's roll with that. And if it turns out that we realize we're talking about different things, then we can.
I was going to say, I think through these discussions, we'll figure out where the discrepancies between our two definitions are.
Are animals conscious?
I was going to bring this up. I tend to believe that consciousness is kind of on a gradient. I believe it's kind of like it.
It
fits to a scalar system, right? And there's different parts of that, right? And I brought this up in the last time, but I realized that podcast might not ever see the light of day. But
someday we'll put it out.
So if you're, for example, one of the big keystones of consciousness that most people agree on is that perception does at least it is a necessary condition for the majority of what
we were talking about
is.
this last night. I don't think that you can say that. I think that
I have looked into it.
With no senses, you would still be conscious.
So I looked into this. There are actually research papers that I briefly skimmed through about that. And I think it said that perception itself, it makes up for all but 0.004% of your own consciousness. And they kind of...
Well, how are they defining consciousness?
That's what I'm saying. It's a little spotty because how do you even write a research paper on that? It's kind of all theory from there.
I feel like what they would have to be saying is like attention.
Yes, and that's one of the things that they say is they do conflate the two. They say attention and perception, or they kind of assume the two to be almost the exact same thing.
Well, and it sounds like they're also conflating attention and consciousness. Like your consciousness in their view would be where your brain is pointed.
Mm-hmm. So my idea as for that would be that perception makes up like the vast majority of what consciousness is. It's like the food for your own consciousness.
So
but there is a catalyst to that. You have a catalyzing consciousness, but I feel like that is purely based off of evolutionary benefit.
So you say consciousness is gradient.
Mm-hmm.
If you were suddenly to lose all of your senses, you became deaf.
Yeah.
You became deaf. You became deaf, dumb, blind. I guess dumb isn't really a sense. You became deaf, blind, couldn't hear.
Points to eyes.
I am too tired.
I
for
get
this.
you. I understand.
What are all this? How do your nerves die? Is there a word for not being able to feel things with your nerves?
I think it actually. I'm not sure what the clinical term for that is, but there is one. But I understand what you're trying to convey. So, if you're without all major
blind,
perceptions,
can't hear.
Yeah, so you have no sense of touch, feel, smell, anything. You're devoid of
no
all
senses.
perception.
Right. So then over time, will your consciousness then degrade? Because you're saying that consciousness comes from perception. It's fed by your perception. And it's gradient, so it could degrade.
I think that depends on how old you are. I think if you're in the early stages of like your own, brain's development, then maybe it could stunt it. But I believe the cutoff, I think it's like mid-30s, I want to say, when your brain like kind of stops, like it's fully developed at that point. I believe that's when that happens. So I think if it's any time before that, then yes. If it's after that, I don't think so. And yeah, again, like I don't think if you remove perception from some person, then I don't think it'll degrade their consciousness. I think as you gain more perception, your consciousness has a greater breadth to it. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
That's at least how I would think about it. I think it's a pretty intuitive way of looking at it.
I mean, that's very interesting because this is not at all a way that I would have even thought about it. But well, so then. And there is a distinction here to be made between kinds of consciousness, because the kind of consciousness that we're talking about, I don't think should be equated with the kind of consciousness that's like there's a question of if you're asleep and you're dreaming, are you conscious? And it's like, well, in the most literal practical sense, no, you're not physically conscious. You're not conscious of what's around you.
You're not clinically conscious.
You would be considered unconscious, but clearly there is still a consciousness that is being conscious of things.
I think unconscious and without conscious are two different things.
Sure.
Yeah. So speaking of...
Linguistically, that's weird, but yes.
Yes. I think the way we use it, I think that's better. So without consciousness would probably be a better thing. And I don't think that's true. I think you are still somewhat conscious, right? Because you can still make logical decisions while you're dreaming. That's... very much so something you can have. Your perceptions might be false, but...
Or even just not material.
Yeah, fair enough. But I don't know. Because like... I guess, yeah.
Because, I mean, in a dream, right? it's not like you're also generating the landscape and all of the things, right? It's not like
Mhm.
you're perceiving stuff, but your consciousness is still active and it's actively interacting with things. But the consciousness has to be imposing the things that are perceived. So consciousness has to operate outside of perception because it's imposing things that are perceived.
No, but that's the thing. That's what I was saying. If you removed all perception, you would still have a consciousness based off of your previous perception. Which is why someone who was blind, who became blind at like age 20 or
Right,
something, can still see
Okay,
stuff.
so
in
this
their
takes us
dreams.
back to the person in the white room.
Yes, yeah. I think they would be an absolute like husk of a person when it comes to how conscious they are, but I don't think they would have any. They would have a catalyst for consciousness, but they wouldn't have anything to actually build that up, because I think the thing that does build that up is perception. And the perception, once you have some information based off of your perception, then you can actually come to conclusions from there, and it grows like exponentially. But I think if you're devoid of all perception, just like entirely, and you don't have a chance to grow that catalyst, then you will still have a conscious. It will just be severely limited. It won't even be recognizable as a conscious or a consciousness.
Well, you were saying, even to catch you up, the other night we were talking about the question of whether or not anything could be new. And so a thought experiment that was posed was, you have a person who, from the moment they're born, is just placed in a white room, white on all sides, and never has any exposure to anything outside of the room. Don't ask me about sustenance. Maybe they lick the walls. I don't know. But and so the question is, then, would they come up with things like, would their thoughts be, would that person in the white room who's never had any exposure to anything besides just the pure white of the room, would their ideas be considered new even if we've thought of them before? And would they think of anything that we haven't thought of before? And his answer was pretty much, well, I don't think they would think. Am I portraying this fairly?
Sure, but I think the way I was perceiving it was not like an actual physical white room. Like, that's obviously the optics of what the thought experiment represents.
Right.
So you could say that they're devoid of all perception. They are blind, deaf. They can't feel things. They can't smell things. They can't do anything. They don't realize that they're alive. It's basically like being in a coma.
Sure, but you're conscious in a coma.
I mean, sure, but you know what I mean. Like, yeah. You're basically just a husk of a person.
Right. The idea is to pose a person who's devoid of all perception, and I like from the moment from devoid of perception from conception.
Slam poetry.
And and I just don't think that such a person wouldn't think. I think all that they could do is think. They would be thinking perpetually.
One thing I would raise to that is that as you gain more knowledge, right? And you would say that hopefully you would agree that knowledge can be developed just naturally, and I will come to why that happens in a bit. But
what do you mean
a
by
majority of the reason
come to naturally? What's an unnatural way to come to knowledge?
Well, okay. So I'm saying, let me explain the first part and then I'll come to
Okay.
that. So I think the majority of knowledge you gain is through perception. That's a fair assumption, right? You either hear somebody teach you something, or you read something, or that's like the majority of where your knowledge comes from, at least your book smartness, your objective knowledge usually is conveyed through perception.
I don't know.
But then you can gain understanding, I should say, not knowledge, but understanding on your own as well. But like the majority of the stuff will be through your own perceptions. You perceive something and then you connect the dots.
I think that's probably been our experience, given that that's the system that we were raised in. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
What would you say is the majority? What would you say is the main reason why people gain an understanding of something?
The main reason people gain an understanding? You mean the like mechanistic reason, not the teleological reason?
Sure.
main reason people gain an understanding of something is that they perceive it. That
they have to use perception
I feel
as like a way of.
I feel like the main reason that people understand things. Well, I'm leaning into the telos, but like I feel like there's an inspiration, a sense of inspiration that comes before all of perception. We have first drives and callings, and then we use our perception to facilitate those. But I think we could still facilitate them without our perception meant cognitively.
I mean, it's a claim that I don't know if I can necessarily refute, because I can't say that's
right.
incorrect.
That's what I've been working with on all of this stuff. But you're basically putting forward an idea of empiricism, that like everything can be everything. All knowledge is deduced from perception, and everything can be understood through perception. And I realize there's the asterisk of most.
I will say
in your
yes,
position, but
not all, but the just unbelievable majority of it. Yes.
Right. And I'm not ready to say that. I'm not an idealist either, which is the opposite of that all knowledge comes a priori to experience. Right. But I don't know. I'm much closer to the middle than you are, I think. I'm probably closer to idealism than to empiricism. I think probably knowledge precedes perception. And perception is just sort of an instrument that we use to facilitate knowledge.
So you think that, is that always the case? Or is that most of the time the case?
I think that would, well, what do you mean by always the case?
So for example, if I observed that, hitting, say we're hunter-gatherer times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that if I hit two rocks together, a spark comes out.
Right.
And I realized that spark flies and hits some dead grass or something, and it ignites for a second. That's a perception. And now I'm like, okay, I can then I can make a theory about something, but that had to come from somewhere. Like the understanding of what fire could be had to come from somewhere. You don't just think that fire exists before you see it exist. I think that's pretty tough to imagine a situation where you would. I think there are instances, especially in theory and stuff like that, you can theorize about stuff before you perceive it in the real world.
Right.
But I think that the things that you had allowed yourself to use to build said theory were built on perception. I think things just happened to start somewhere from perception. That's all you were given, and then you make conclusions based off of that.
Yes, I don't disagree with you, but I think that the framework we're using to understand all of the things and value them is coming outside of the perception, is coming before the perception. I think the desire to make, the desire to hit things, the desire to do all of this stuff, the desire to understand that we are here and we can do these things and we can hit the rocks is coming before this, I think.
Sure. But I think that desire itself is based off of, you could say it's inherent to, humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fair argument. But again, those are the things that build to something that you try and do, and then you perceive it and then you understand it. And you can perceive things without understanding it as well. That's you could I guarantee you they had no idea that, the first person to put something over top of a fire and realize, oh wait, the fire goes out when I when I put something over top of it, right? Because they don't fundamentally understand what fire is, right? But that perception of hey, we tried this thing, right? Maybe it's a happy accident. Maybe it was a theory that built up to that. I don't know. But you did something and then you perceive something. And it's basically a hypothesis observation type of thing. It's like the scientific method.
This may be a problem of interests, because I don't disagree with the things that you're saying. It's just that my focus is on a different part of the experience and the dealing with the things, because you're talking very much mechanistically.
Right.
And I'm very much thinking teleologically. I'm very much thinking about the purpose and the drive. The like, you're thinking about the how, and I'm thinking about the why. And the why is really what I put on the pedestal of what knowledge is. Like, you can learn an infinite amount about a system and still not know why the system's there or what it's doing.
I mean, sure. I don't think that necessarily discounts the how in this argument, at least.
Sure, and mechanistic knowledge is worth something, and you do, I think, predominantly gain mechanistic knowledge through perception. Although, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just because we're gaining knowledge of things that are perceived. Because would you agree that there are things that exist outside of perception?
Yes.
Do you think that we can understand those things to some extent?
To some extent, yes. Fully, no.
And so that understanding can't come out of perception, right? Because they're not things that can be perceived. Our understanding of the imperceivable.
So you're saying we do have an understanding of... I don't think you can have an understanding of the imperceivable.
I said, do you agree that there are things that can't be perceived? And you said yes. And I said, do you agree that you can, to some extent, understand the things that cannot be perceived? And you said yes.
Oh.
And so I'm saying, when you understand them...
Well, okay.
You're understanding them outside of perception.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If I'm thinking about it mechanistically, then no, that doesn't work at all. Like, if say there's a planet that's outside of our observable universe.
No. You're something that cannot be perceived, that could not possibly be perceived. Something that exists outside of the realm of perception.
I don't think there is anything.
Well, I mean, dark matter exists, and it can't really be perceived.
It
but
can be perceived. With different
secondhand,
tools and stuff.
I guess. Yeah. Fair enough. But, like, I mean...
everything that exists in this universe would be, in theory, perceivable. Whether we have the technology to do that or not, that's a difference.
Well, okay, there's something to that. That's an interesting idea, because even, like, my inclination is to say, like, is to look at the divine, is to think of... Because, instantly I'm thinking about God and how we can't necessarily just, like, see God or whatever. He says, anyone who sees me would die. Any man who sees me would die. But at the same time, all good is a reflection of the divine. And so we are sort of perceiving the divine essence, just not in full.
Right. And I mean, you having these...
and natural revelation we understand through our...
Which would be in some way, maybe what would that be? Kind of a tempered perception?
Yeah, I mean, natural revelation we get just by observing the world around us and deducing from it. And so that's through perception. And then we get special revelation, which is just like scripture or, visions or whatever. And that also is perception.
Yep. Should we circle back to what I was talking about?
Is there anything outside of perception? This is an interesting question.
You would probably say yes.
My instinct is absolutely to say yes, but I'm having trouble qualifying that instinct, because the divine is my first thing to jump to.
Your distinction between, or the distinction between capital G good and lowercase g good is kind of a perfect example of that. I don't think capital G good is if I'm assuming your position on that, I don't think that would be perceivable at all.
Sure, but we understand it through our perception of lowercase g good.
Is it too perfect to understand?
Well, yes, absolutely. But our understanding...
You have an idea of it, but you don't have a full understanding of it.
Any understanding that we have of capital G, we gain through our perception of lowercase g good. Mm-hmm. Did I say capital good G?
I don't know, but roll with it.
Yeah.
So I think it does work with your model. That's not like it doesn't conflict with your model.
I'm not as sold as that. I'm not as sold on that as you are, because all of our understanding of all of these things, the understanding of the transcendentals, comes from an understanding of the material. It's just idealized. It's taken, it's lifted out of the faults that come with existence and brought there. And the thing itself isn't perceivable, but we understand it through, like, all understanding that we have of it comes through perception.
Right. And you could say that that would be a tool to try, like as an attempt to have imperfect beings understand something that's imperceivable. Right, because that's probably curated in a way that would be the most conducive for human understanding, at least. We won't fully understand it, but it's probably one of the best ways.
What about morality?
In what respect?
We all have an inbuilt sense of morality. We have a moral compass, but
Sure.
we don't see or perceive morality. We sort of do, in the sense that we feel bad if we do something that's immoral, but
I think, yeah.
I don't feel like we're perceiving immorality. We're just perceiving the consequences of it.
Yes, and that's what I was saying. This is I think another part of consciousness that I was quick to bring up, right? It branches from itself. Like if I understand that pies exist and I understand that apples exist, I can kind of have the idea. I'm like, oh, what about an apple pie? Like I can come to, it's deductive reasoning. I could say like, hey, this could exist. You could say,
may have said that backwards, but if pies exist, then apples must exist?
No, I'm saying if pies exist and apples exist, then apple pie could exist.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And so, where was I going with that? What were you saying before? Oh, right. So morality would be one of those things that you deduce instead of observe. So you use perceptions to say like, hey, I just witnessed someone stab someone. That was an immoral act. Right, but me saying that's an immoral act is kind of a combination. It's deductive reasoning from my current moral framework and what I've just observed, and you deduce that it's immoral.
Where does the current moral framework come from?
That's a good question. We can discuss morality if you want to, but in short, you're an objective morality person. I'm a subjective morality person.
I am, but it almost sounds like your goal isn't even just to say that morality is variable between people, but that it only exists it doesn't exist in and of itself. It only exists as an amalgamation of responses to consequences. Right,
and I think that's one of the inbuilt responses you have as a human, right? Like there's something inherently disturbing, for example, for a human to watch another human die.
Right.
Right. That's just, I think that is, you could discuss why that's evolutionarily important to have. I think it'd be more to like the benefit of like having a tribe system, right? Like a community. But on that basis, you have these fundamental ideas that come as part of like just being human that kind of guide you towards a moral framework. Right, because you understand that that's bad. I think most people, unless you have some type of mental illness, understand that like you're going to have a negative reaction to watching another person die. And I don't think that's necessarily deduced. Well, I guess it.
Would the person in the white room be aware of their mortality?
Probably not. No.
I'm not so sure. I can't remember who it was, but I was just reading someone make the argument that we're aware of our mortality from birth. And even from your evolutionary framework, that kind of makes sense. I feel like that would just kind of be an inbuilt thing as a biological creature, that you're just necessarily aware that you will die. Even if you don't have like the linguistic or like conceptual framework for it necessarily, you're like... in the way that we understand it, which still isn't that thorough.
Right.
You still would like certainly the person in the white room would be afraid of things.
I don't know.
Would experience
they would
fear.
For example, like I think certain things. This is one thing I kind of hate is when people call like a fear of snakes or spiders irrational. And I'm like, that is perfectly rational. I think that's like one of those built-in things. You recognize I guess you could say the form of a snake, and you're
Right.
like, yeah, I want to stay away from that. It signals a thing in your brain that's like, hey, danger, stay away. So I think that would be one of the things that are built in, but I don't think that necessarily comes from any inherent value you have with your consciousness. I think that is just to your own evolutionary benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
With the evolution tacked on, though, you're almost arguing for a sort of because that knowledge, that it would be fair to say that then that's knowledge, but it's not.
It's not
I
perceived
can't say
knowledge.
knowledge,
Yeah.
but like that is valid conscious understanding,
Mm-hmm.
but that it doesn't come through perception. But you're almost making the case that it comes through like inculcated. It's like inculcated understanding. It's inherited understanding from other people who perceived that they were bad and then birthed you.
Potentially, but that's not. I think this is actually an interesting discussion. I would really love to talk to a biologist about that if I had the opportunity.
We should have people on for these.
Yeah, but I was going to bring up for example, you can find, I don't know, from the latest Alien Romulus movie, like the weird tall dude who's like a combination. That's uncanny and creepy, right? But you're not going to see that in the wild. What about that is creepy to you? There's no evolutionary benefit to say that's creepy. So I think there's a form of what you assume to be like that induces fear in you that isn't as simple as like, oh, you understand what a spider is, you understand what this is, you understand what that is. I think there's just a more abstract idea of what would induce fear in your brain.
There's a perception of what's unnatural. This is why, like, even the best CGI, we see it and you can be convinced by it and think that it's real, but at the same time you feel a little bit like,
Yeah.
There's just that little voice in the back of your head because we're finely tuned to perceive what is correct and what is incorrect, what is natural and what is unnatural.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'd do unnatural and natural, but yeah, sure. I don't think you can like put it. I don't think it's a perfect term, is what I'm trying to say. But I'll let you continue with that.
Well, I don't know. That was all I had to say.
Okay. Well, if I did want to fully circle back, because
sure.
I think
send it. I don't even remember where we started.
We were talking about whether or not consciousness exists on a gradient, and the different facets of it. And I wanted to bring up the chimpanzee test.
Okay.
Because I think it's a good example of just like if you're understanding consciousness to include reasoning like that, or like mental capacity maybe, then chimpanzees do actually excel beyond what humans can do in certain ways. That's why they have a thing called the chimpanzee test, which is basically like a fairly simple number memorization game. You can find it online. It's really easy. But that game, chimpanzees perform better than the human by like a significant margin. But that doesn't mean that does that mean they're more conscious than we are? No. Which is why, that's what I'm saying. So I don't know if I can quantify consciousness in that regard, which is why I have an idea that consciousness exists on a scale, especially in the animal kingdom. And we have like it's almost like sliders, right? You have to put points into one thing and then you can take points away from the other.
That meme where you can only flip two of the three switches.
Yeah. Which would mean that we had we happen to get a very particularly balanced set given the world that we exist in. It's just a very like good set to have.
I agree with all of these things. I just don't think you can call that consciousness. I don't think that's what consciousness is. I think there's awareness and there's ability, but these things are distinct from consciousness, which is which is again sort of an uncharacterizable, the breath of life.
I think awareness absolutely is part of it. I would say that. I think
part of it, but not all of it.
If you're aware of yourself, that's probably a good indicator of consciousness. But would you say is a fly conscious?
Probably not.
Because I
think they're not.
I don't think I would be able to call it conscious or unconscious, or without conscious. Because it doesn't seem intuitive to call it conscious because it doesn't understand what it is. No, it's probably just
Well,
hardwired
so
to
here's a
do
distinction
certain things.
for you.
Yeah.
I think that bugs in particular, I don't know how far this extends up the animal kingdom. I think reptiles are also like this, but
Mhm.
they're purely acting on instinct. There's no cognition going on. It's just like it's all knee jerk. And I don't
Mhm.
think that qualifies as consciousness. I think a necessary qualifier for consciousness is the ability to think outside of the context of action.
Okay, sure. I bet there's a way. I bet there's little bits in there. I would say that that's probably the case. I mean, we're also kind of.
We have that. We have the knee jerk,
Yes.
but it's not all that. We can think about things that are not tied to actions, and we do.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and I would agree with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that idea. I wouldn't go as far to say, like I said, I wouldn't say that snakes, for example, wouldn't like be conscious. But if I'm saying that snakes aren't conscious, that I can't say that I am. Does that make sense?
No.
Because I don't think if you're saying snakes aren't conscious, then you're defining consciousness, but I can't define consciousness.
But I think even though we can't necessarily define it in clear terms, it still would be plausible to say that a snake is not conscious and you are conscious.
Sure, but I don't think there's a concrete definition for that. I think you'd like there'd be.
Well, let's get an actual definition of consciousness.
What
does the internet say?
I tried to do that earlier, and it wasn't super helpful. But I can.
Give me the Oxford.
The Oxford Dictionary.
Just because it's what comes up.
Mm.
I'm curious what the.
Let me see. Internal knowledge or conviction. The state or fact of being mentally conscious or aware of something. Well, that second part isn't super useful.
Yeah, conviction is an interesting one.
Yeah, okay. Internal knowledge, yeah. That's...
Internal knowledge, yeah. Which is basically what we were saying just now. I want to see...
So is that snake's knee-jerk reaction knowledge?
No, it's not a belief.
But is knowledge and belief the same thing?
Knowledge is generally defined in the philosophical world, and there are asterisks to this, and there are critiques of it, but the general understanding of knowledge is justified true belief. So it has to be justified, and that you have to actually have a good reason to assume this to be true.
Mm.
You have to be correct. It has to be true in order for it to count as knowledge, and you have to believe it. So you can't say that this is true, but I don't believe or accept it.
It has to be true to be considered knowledge.
Justified true belief. You can't know something that's not true. Like your name is Mason. I can't know that your name, I was going to say your middle name. That doesn't work. I can't say that your name is Carter.
Right, but
someone
could deceive you.
Sure, but you would be wrong. You wouldn't actually know his name. You would think that you knew his name, so you would have believe, because I believe your name to be Carter, and you have the justification because someone told me your name is Carter, but it's not true, so it's not knowledge because it's not. Even though I believe it and I'm justified in believing it, it's not actually true, and so I can't really say that I know it, like, in the purest sense of the word.
I mean, okay. Sure, but that truth only lies with whoever you're talking about then, because what if everybody in the world thought my name was Carter?
They would all be wrong. Your name is Mason.
I'm aware, but then I would be the only holder of the truth.
Well, sure. I mean, you and existence.
So that, yeah, but that's just I don't know. The whole name thing is weirding me out. But
well, okay. I could think that lamp was made of stone. Someone could have told me that lamp is made of stone. And I could believe that lamp is made of stone.
Well, there's stone in it.
But it's not stone. I'm talking about the metal part there.
Right, yeah.
Is metal stone? You get what I'm getting
If
at.
you want to talk about a spotty definition, stone is really bad for that. I watched a whole thing on geology about that exact thing.
That's very fun. I'm surprised.
Rocks are even worse.
I thought stones and rocks were the same.
I don't believe they are. No.
Like a stone is just like a medium to large sized rock.
I think maybe I was thinking of rock when I was thinking of that. But yeah, anyway, I think, that's a very clear problem with the definition.
So the 1828 Webster's Dictionary defines consciousness as the knowledge of sensations and mental operations, or of what passes in one's own mind. The active mind which makes known an internal object. Which I quite like. I like the knowledge of what passes in one's own mind. That's right, because now we're getting metacognition.
Sure. I will say I don't really like the term knowledge. I very much separate knowledge and understanding, like in a big way. I think you can know something and not understand it. And I think understanding is much more important than knowledge is.
I mean, to say that you know something is really just to say that you understand it to be true, though.
Sure, but you can know something and not understand it. Like you.
But what do you mean by understand? Like, I get what you're saying, but I don't think understand has to be used in that sort of mechanistic way by which you understand the process through which it occurs. Like, I
think anything outside of that is a blind belief. But I don't think we should really get into that because that'll get very. We'll probably. Have trouble staying on topic with that
one. Well, do you have something to throw in, or should I throw out our next thing?
I could. We're going to have to get to the Cogito at some point.
That's a couple brackets from here.
Right. We could talk about whether artificial intelligence is conscious.
This is an interesting one. Well, I'll pose you even another thing before that one.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to upload your consciousness somehow onto a computer...
You couldn't.
If I could...
Then anything's possible because you can't.
Don't use your analytical logic here. This is.
Sure.
I don't think it's necessarily a contradiction.
I'll play along with it.
You don't think that the consciousness and the body are possibly conceivably separable?
You could have an image of my consciousness, but it wouldn't. But
not the. How are you so confident in this?
Because I think a fundamental part of being conscious is having random events. Random events.
Interesting.
I think that is what makes consciousness unique and so interesting, like just in general. I think because you have certain random events in your brain that just happen, right? Like you get a song that you haven't heard in years stuck in your head randomly. Where did that come from? What was the catalyst for that happening? There wasn't necessarily a reason for that. Obviously, that's a very trivial example, but I think the whole way new ideas come about, deductive ideas, not perceived knowledge. Sorry, there's a lot of big words right now.
Perceived.
Not necessarily that
the
one.
biggest of words.
Yeah. But I do think the whole uniqueness of consciousness comes from random events. And I think the whole universe is dictated by randomness.
That's a fascinating idea. The former more so than the latter, but
yeah.
That's
So if you were to try and
I disagree.
Okay. If you were to try and put my consciousness into a machine, I don't think humanity could achieve it, but in theory, if it were if you could do that, then it would have to be an image of what my current consciousness is, and there wouldn't be necessarily anything unique about it. I think you just have an image of my consciousness. I don't think what you would be talking to there would even be me. I think there'd be a separation there. I don't think that would be me. Because it doesn't have that. You're taking something that can be influenced by randomness and putting it into something that can't. You're putting it into a confined structure.
Sure.
And I don't think that would be you at that point.
What if we assume, before I go into my disagreement with that.
Okay.
What if we assume what if we assume a Cartesian dualism, and what we're assigning to the computer isn't necessarily the body of the mind, which you're assuming is the body of the consciousness, but would rather just be the tether. You know what I mean? Like the consciousness, I'm inclined to agree with this. I think that the consciousness precedes and exists outside of the body, and the the way in which the consciousness manifests itself in the world. I think that your conscious being is a distinct thing from your mind, your brain. The mind and the brain are different. And so I think you could put maybe I'm inclined to agree that you couldn't possibly upload the brain into a computer in a functional way, but you may be able to move the tether of your conscious, the thing that experiences. This is.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. I don't think. Okay, I see what you're saying. You're speaking mainly theoretically here, right? I don't think would be practically possible.
Obviously, a hypothetical.
Yeah.
But yeah, this may be a good way to define define consciousness also, which would be the thing that experiences.
Right. Yeah,
which
I
would also qualify. Well, I don't know. You have to define what an experience is then in order to qualify.
We're not getting back into that.
We are going to get back into that.
Well, we
later.
Actually probably are. But
in order to figure out what which animals qualify as conscious and which don't, like bugs, depends on how you define experience. But at any rate, I think qualifying consciousness as the thing that experiences is solid. I'm happy with that.
Sure. I would for reference, that he just made a very bizarre noise with his shoe. Oh man, that is awful. Okay. I would probably take a more mechanistic approach. I think that the idea of a mind is more of a form that you understand as a person. I think where it actually is housed, yes, physically it is in your brain, but it's like a collection of things in your brain that all interact together. I think
so. You posit that the mind doesn't exist in and of itself. It's only a culmination of the various things floating around your brain.
I believe so, but if you're talking practically about what the mind is, I think how we understand it is an abstract amalgamation of things going on in your brain. We can take an abstraction of what we believe the mind to be and use that in a useful way.
So what experiences? What does the experiencing? Is it your brain?
It is. Okay, well, let's break down. I think experience and perception are almost the exact same thing. I think they're nearly undistinguishable.
I may be amicable to this.
Because,
the terms might be interchangeable. An experience. Yeah. So I don't know that you can experience something without perceiving it. Because, perception doesn't necessarily imply physical.
Right, but here's the thing, that kind of conflicts with your whole white room argument if you want to go into the cogito thing. If you assume that to be true, then it kind of breaks down the line.
And I've been wavering on this on your brand of empiricism. It's very interesting, but I do think, I guess maybe what I think isn't that a person completely devoid of perception would still have consciousness, but rather that you can't, it's impossible for there to be a person that is devoid of perception entirely. Because even if you only experience nothingness, you're still experiencing nothingness. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think you can get around that.
So I would agree. I think that it is impossible for that situation ever to happen. I don't think, even if you made a perfect universe where you could do that, I don't think that would be possible at all.
Right, because perception doesn't just come through the senses. You perceive the emptiness. You perceive the absence of sensory stimulus.
That I wouldn't agree with. I don't think you would know that you're without perception.
I agree. You wouldn't be able to say, "Oh, I should be feeling things with my hands, but I'm not." But you would think.
I don't think you would.
You would think something. You would make something of your experience.
I think what you would have to rely on is, like I said, those hard-coded knee-jerk reactions. And
you wouldn't have anything to knee-jerkly react to.
Exactly, but that would still exist in your brain. I don't think you would have anything to actually elicit any type of response based off of that, but I think that would still be housed in your brain.
And so you have these inbuilt drives. You have you have a sort of calling, you have your instinctual inclinations and whatever. And because you're without because you're without sense, you have no place to channel those inclinations. You have no place to channel your drives and your instincts and stuff, but you still have them. And so that would, I think, right there be the foundation for all of the thought that would happen is I have a call to be doing something and I can't do anything. And that right there would, like, I think, be enough to send you out into a lifetime of senseless thought.
Gotcha.
Asensory thought.
I agree with everything except for the built-in idea of a calling. It doesn't really make that much sense from how I stand.
I mean, even evolutionarily, I think we're just driven to do things. Like, the person is just gonna have the fundamental urge to procreate. They're not gonna know what that is. They're not gonna be able to do it. They're not gonna have any sort of framework to understand that urge, but the urge will still be there.
Sure. I mean, yes, but I think that's an idea that urge, I think, is deductive. I think you have that built in, but you need you need a hot babe to see in order to actually elicit that instinctive,
I don't think that's
thing in
true.
your brain. I don't think you'll have that urge at all if you can't perceive anything.
I don't think that's true. I think that's just a fundamental drive. It is separate from outside.
I agree, it's a fundamental drive.
That's separate from external stimulus. I think necessarily you will want to have kids at some point.
How do you understand what a kid is?
Maybe you don't, but you still feel the yearning. You feel that there's something missing.
I mean, sure. I think that's very hard to debate between.
Sure, we're
deep in the weeds right now. I would say it's probably. I think it does exist. I think there's obviously a very a very primal urge to do that, but I don't. I think you need something to actually drive any tangible observation of you having that urge.
I disagree with that, but a more compelling refutation of my claim would be that, well, that's just coming about as a perception, as a sensory response to your hormones. And so if you take away the hormones, or you take away the connection between the hormones and the brain somehow, then you take away that urge. And it's like, maybe, well, I think the childbearing solves that, though, because, excuse me, because that only answers for, I don't think the emptiness that you feel without children is a hormonal thing. I think. I could be wrong about this. Sex drive is a hormonal thing. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's not foundational and inbuilt.
I mean,
it's
almost
just that, God works through means.
Everything that drives the instinct of a human is hormonal. There's some ridiculous number of hormonal changes you go. I think it's I want to say 40 something hormones that dictate all the systems in your body. It's kind of crazy. I think simple things, I could be completely wrong about this, but as an example, hey, I'm thirsty, therefore I'm going to have a hormonal change that my brain responds to. It's oh, I'm thirsty.
Right. So if you take away hormones, do you take away feeling entirely? We got to get a biologist.
Feeling doesn't exist in here. You don't have feeling.
What? No, not physical feeling. I mean,
are you talking about emotional feeling?
I mean, right. Feeling.
I don't think your
exist
brain would know how to even interpret that. I think you would still receive them. I don't think your brain would know what to do with that at all.
I'm inclined to agree.
You wouldn't be able to interpret it. You'd still receive the signals. It's like having a busted radio. Signals are still going there, but there's nothing you can get from them.
But doesn't sex drive come out of hormones? Like that feeling, the feeling of arousal is a hormonal thing. So if you cut away the hormones, then you cut away the arousal.
But if that is the case, then you had something. I believe that you had something to. I keep using the word catalyst, but it's just such a good word. You had some type of catalyst to that. Something that brought that about. I don't think you haven't naturally.
I think this is just fundamentally incorrect. I'm sorry.
But if you're sitting alone on your bed and you just like you're not doing anything, just obviously you're always doing something, but you're not doing anything. All of a sudden, sex drive hormones. Is that what? I don't think that makes any sense. I think you need to have something.
I don't think so.
That does that. At least that's not my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like the way we're built, we have like the hormones that make you aroused necessarily just rise and sort of come to a peak in your mid-20s and then go back down. And I think when they're at their
right, but it's not
peak,
a constant, right? Like you're not.
Sure, they go like.
You're saying like the average would be higher in your 20s.
It's like a stock market. And it like goes up and it goes up and then it
Brownian
peaks
motion.
and then we start to
general trend Brownian motion.
Sure. This is your domain. But yeah, I think when you're floating around that top there, I don't think you necessarily need something to spark the feeling. I feel like the hormones are just there eating away at you to feel the feeling. This is where, I mean, if you're burning with lust, it just, I don't think you need a subject for your lust to consume you.
Sure. I think that's just a fundamental disagreement. I don't think we can really get.
Surely this one's resolvable though.
I don't think it.
I think this would be Googleable. I'm not saying we should do it now, but
yeah, we can come back to this at a later point.
Surely that one can be.
We can do some research into how the hormones like activily influence the brain.
See, if we had a following already, then we could just ask them and they would tell us.
Yo, chat. Did you have something you wanted to lead straight into?
Well, sure. So we were talking about the experience, the consciousness being the thing that experiences. Is this definition amicable to you?
I think I don't think calling it a definition is
this apt. Understanding amicable to you?
I think colloquially, sure, yes, but I don't think consciousness as an idea is tangible. You can have like a general. You can come up with things that'll help you in having a practical understanding of it, but I don't think consciousness is really quantifiable.
So you don't think that you can call consciousness the thing that experiences? I think
you could say that's part of it, maybe.
Well,
but I don't think it's
true. I'm not like trying to make an exhaustive list of all of its components and functions.
Exactly.
What I'm doing
what
I'm doing is identifying the thing that it is. I'm pointing to a thing and saying, "Hey, that thing right there, that's consciousness." And maybe it has it's just like defining, well, not just like, but it's like defining God, right? Because like we know that God is love, and so we can point to love and say that right there, that thing right there is God. And I don't mean to say that love itself as an idol, but like love, the quality is
right.
Worldly love is imperfect, so it's not absolute love, and so it's not God. This is why Jesus was God, because he was absolute love. But anyway, I'm not trying to say that we should make an idol out of worldly love, or that it's perfect, or that it itself is God, but the true transcendental love is God. And so when we look at love, we can point to that and we can say that thing right there, that we're looking at through this lens of worldly love is God. Same thing with consciousness. It's not that it's everything that it does. It's not that it's a complete description of it, because it's infinite and not completely describable. I don't know if I want to say consciousness is infinite, but maybe. But
sounds like you're conflating consciousness with God.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for that.
We can talk about that later if you want, but yeah. I've got him on the thought train now.
I mean, it necessarily comes from God. I think it necessarily isn't God, but well, I don't know. I mean,
basically the question is it infinitely
complex? Part of the divine essence in it. Well, is consciousness so? Okay, here's why it's not God.
Okay.
I don't think consciousness is eternal because consciousness begins.
Sure.
And I mean individual consciousness, obviously, not like all,
Right.
not the sum total of all consciousness.
Are you denying that are you saying that it is finite then?
Not necessarily finite, but not eternal. Because it has a beginning, but it'll go on infinitely, but it begins. It hasn't been here since before time.
So you're saying an abstraction is taking the form of something that could be considered part of God?
I think your consciousness begins at conception. And I don't think that... Well, even that's interesting. But we'll roll with it for now.
Yeah.
Consciousness is a fascinating issue. This is... But anyway, you can see the time we've been going up there.
Oh, yeah, true. Well, I was just... Because the AC just, I think, maybe shut off.
Oh, I see.
I don't think it did. I set it until 7:15. And I think it's 6:45.
Maybe it just got as cold as it wanted to get.
Possibly. I think that's probably the best. Anyway.
But yeah, so assuming that consciousness begins at or shortly following conception, then like God is the transcendentals, right? God is the qualities, the divine essence is these things: beauty, truth, goodness, love, all this stuff. And then there's the way in which the qualities manifest themselves within the divine essence. And so we know through divine simplicity that anything that God is just is God. God is not made of components. God is just one simple essence, one crude thing. Crude meaning not made of parts. And so my instinct with that, which was misguided, was to say then, well, okay, we know God is infinite and eternal. And so love, truth, absolute truth must also be absolute infinity. And so then this is how we ended up with, from one of our former podcasts, which we may or may not release someday, the idea that being finite is sinful, which is fun and which I like, but does not hold. And here's why. A fundamental axiom that I've been pushed into as a consequence of my faith is that time does not exist in and of itself. And the reason for that is what I was just talking about. Because if it's sinful to be finite or eternal or whatever, in heaven, all sin will be burned away and people will exist free of their sin. But if you understand finitude and not the opposite of eternalness, uneternality.
You just say not mortal. Mortal's one.
Sure. Well, no, that's not right.
It's close, but it's not right. I get the idea, though.
Finitude and having a beginning. If you understand those things as sinful, then either we're sinful or we're God. And there's no in between. And that doesn't work because that makes heaven a contradiction, because we can't be sinful to be in heaven, but we also can't be God by definition because there can only be one of him. And so, and I'm not questioning the Trinity. It's just weird language because it's, Right. Anyway, so then this means that the parts of the divine essence that are anchored around time, the eternality, the eternalness.
Eternality sounds cool. You should roll with that.
Heck yeah. The eternality and the infiniteness.
AC's
go,
working.
The infinity and the eternality. The infiniteness and the eternality can't be actual existing, can't be qualities in and of themselves. They can't be things that God is, because then it's sinful not to replicate them, and then we get the contradiction we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that they have to not exist in and of themselves. They're just ways of describing how the existing qualities, how they exist, the manner in which they exist. But they're not qualities themselves. So God is truth and beauty and love and goodness and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that he is infinity or eternality or whatever, but he is all of these things infinitely and eternally. Right? And so if that's true, like we know that God exists outside of time also. And so if all these things are true, then God must have, then time really only exists the way that it was put to me, which I quite like. Time really only exists as a way to measure the behavior of matter. And God created all matter. And so really time is just a necessary consequence of the imposition of matter via creation. And so time doesn't exist in and of itself. Don't remember where I was going with this.
Well, I was going to say, if it makes you happy, this is very much so in agreement with theory of relativity. This fits perfectly. It's like a perfect
interesting
for that. Yeah,
I love when science qualifies religion. It's very.
I'm
fun.
not saying that like you come up with a theory of relativity and then you conclude God. I'm saying that
no,
if
sure,
you understand God,
but
then the theory of relativity actually does fit fairly well into that model. So.
And I've found that almost always scientific truth qualifies religious truth, Christian truth, and it's
yes, for the most part. I don't agree that like.
And
the Bible's a perfect vessel
see.
of that, but yes, I sure, yeah, under that metric. If it's a very abstract idea of God, I would generally agree, yeah.
That's very interesting. I'll have to look into that. That sounds fascinating. Mm-hmm. But didn't somebody come along and like kind of knock down the theory of relativity though?
No. So the biggest, I guess. What would I say? Not the enemy, but like
Satan himself.
But like for example, things like string theory. Basically, general relativity is great if you're talking about big things, or what we assume to be big. Because like, what does big mean? But you know what I mean. Like,
I've heard a fun idea that we're like perfectly in the middle of the sizes of things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sure. I think.
But that may just be that the sizes of things compound infinitely in both directions, and so it appears that way.
Yeah. Anyway, so general relativity describes big things in our universe very well.
Really, what even is a thing?
Like it describes galaxies.
No, I know that wasn't.
I think you from there can kind of understand black holes and gravity and stuff like that.
Right.
Even though gravity is like still one of the biggest mysteries of the universe, but we don't have to talk about that. But then you have things like string theory that try to explain the small, right? So there is a little bit of a disagreement between trying to apply general relativity to things that are small. So it's not that it's flawed, it's just that it does well in a certain, in a certain lens, and then others it's not so great. So that's how I would tell you about that. Quick science lesson.
So do you remember why I was talking about time not existing in and of itself?
I don't know. You looked over at your notes over there.
I don't think that was related.
Oh.
My notes are just the questions.
We should probably get to the Cogito at some point. This is...
Sure. Well, yeah. So whatever happened before, what I was starting to say in the beginning of this was that... If we take, the identity, I was talking about the identification of a thing instead of like the definition of a thing, not providing an exhaustive list, but
sure.
Sorry, not providing an exhaustive list, but rather identifying via a single quality off of the list of several things.
Right. Yeah. And you were trying to apply that to consciousness, which by saying that.
Well, I mean, that is what I'm doing.
That which perceives. Yeah.
Right.
That which experiences. Which I think are the exact same thing. And I think you can.
I'm inclined to agree with you. But yeah, so anyway, so then we can break up. I think there was something else that led me into that. It felt more pertinent when I started, but whatever. On topic.
Yeah, we love staying on topic on this podcast.
So if consciousness is the thing that experiences, then I like which better. That sounds nicer. The thing which experiences. Then then the next task is to peel apart consciousnesses from consciousnesses, because you experience different things from what I experience, and your experience of things, of the same things, is different from my experience of those things. Yes. And so clearly your consciousness is distinct from my consciousness.
Sure. Right, like I'm partly colorblind and you're not.
Sure.
So my sensory experiences are different.
Right, or even if like the same lady hits on both of us, maybe you'd be like, woo, and maybe I'd be like, or whatever.
Sure, that works.
Or vice versa. I didn't mean that as a diss to your standards. That came out meaner than I meant it to.
No, that wasn't mean. Okay, I didn't interpret it that way.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then clearly our consciousnesses are distinct. So then the question is, where does this distinction fall? What constitutes me versus you? Where is identity?
Right, and so this kind of, so in the previous podcast,
here's the full question. What are you?
In the previous podcast, I had we kind of went over somewhat of we kind of briefly touched on our political leanings, which I don't think we should do in this podcast because it'll put us on a weird track. Yeah. But essentially, I kind of believe that people are a product of their environments. That's essentially what it boiled down to. So I think you and I have just objectively had different, experiences growing up and whatnot.
Sure.
We've perceived differently. And that's where the distinction comes in. And that distinction is incredibly complicated because of just the breadth of perceptions and experiences that we've had throughout our lives. So they are very different. Like the difference is very complicated, but
I disagree.
But I think the strongest parts of your consciousness, I would agree, are those fundamentals, right? Like the drive to be a good person, which not everyone has, but I'd like to believe everybody does.
I think everyone does.
Yeah, so
I think some people bury it better than others.
If that's the case, then yes, those are like the really big similarities, but there's still a very clear distinction between the two. So I think it would just be the breadth of your own experiences that you have that distinguishes you from another person. Does it mean you're not conscious? No, because consciousness is an abstract idea that we derive via our own. We derive actually from our perceptions. I think we derive the idea of consciousness, which we can discuss later if you want to.
Well, yeah. I mean, that kind of feels like part of the cogito.
Yeah.
Well, let's step into identity for a minute rather than the consciousness specific thing.
Right.
Because I think they'll link to each other, but we don't have to start there. It's so your position is that your identity, what qualifies you as you, is your experiences. You think
yes.
So if you forget everything that you've experienced, are you still you?
It depends. If I have forgotten everything that I've experienced and all conclusions that I have made based off of what I've perceived, then yes. Then I think you're down to that
full reset on all knowledge.
Yeah.
But so how do you reconcile identical twins?
Are you talking about
being different? Genetically, they're the same.
Well, yeah,
they're raised in the
experiences. They can't have the exact same experience. That is impossible.
I guess
in a school photo, one's on the right, one's on the left.
Nearly identical. Especially
right, and they
if we're talking about
similar.
Early in life.
They turn out very similar. A lot of identical twins get into the same sports, and even identical twins that have been separated, which this is really fascinating. There's like a shocking number, and I don't think you can attribute it to coincidence, but like identical twins that have been separated from birth and have grown up in two completely different households actually end up enjoying the same things. It's really interesting. Yeah. Which I think plays into the evolution thing, but I don't know exactly how I'd piece that together. That's still a thing that people are researching. So I should
totally get a person on here who knows about this stuff sometime.
I could very much so, do some research and report back in the next episode, because I do find that interesting, and it is a little bit of a, hole to punch, at least for now, in my whole idea of like a fundamental problem in that whole, which I think might be a fundamental like pitfall in my own understanding of what you have at like a baseline if you haven't perceived anything. That baseline understanding you have via evolution, that might be a pitfall in that. So I would be interested to look into that. But again,
I would
that's
also
not
be
something
very
I would
interested
do today,
in that,
so.
right? But so fair enough. In your response to the twin thing, they're not exactly identical.
Identical.
But but then like it may be running too late.
Yeah, we're not cutting this. This is just funny.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Anyway, so then you would also posit that you would, that if you ran through the same experiences, sorry. Okay, I remember we've had this conversation before, and it's a weird thing to try to articulate. But last time, the hypothetical that I gave you, which I like and I'm going to stick with, is, and I remember the critique that you made of this also. I'm curious to see if you'll offer the same one this time. But
I don't remember it, so this will be interesting.
Yeah. What if you were born in my body and I were born in your body?
Mm-hmm.
So your consciousness in here in all this, born to my mother, living through my experiences, do you think you would be the same person that I am right now?
No.
Why?
Because okay, even if I had the same perceptions and stuff like that, I think the fun, like I need to come up with a better, like, I need to come up with a term to describe this, because I keep saying the fundamental evolutionary principles that live in your brain without experience. Like that whole idea. There needs to be a quick way to do that. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about. That would be different between you and I. Right? Because we have different we have different genetics. Like we're going to have a different baseline. I'll just call it the baseline. We're going to have a different baseline.
You don't have different genetics. You're me. Your consciousness, all of my physical things.
Oh, okay. Well, then I don't think there is any distinction between you and I then. There would be like you as you are now and me in a conscious. The baseline, there is no distinction between. Yeah, there would not be a distinction between those, I don't think.
This was roughly the critique that you made last time, is that my hypothetical kind of leans on a dualism, because I assume that consciousness can be separated from physical, from body.
I don't think there would be any distinguishable difference between those two, because the only difference the difference between that would be nothing in my mind. There's no difference. You're saying if I would transport your consciousness into, swap consciousnesses, then if you're saying that those learned or not learned behaviors, the baseline would be the same between us because it lives in your brain.
I don't think it does. I think that there is a you, the essence of which precedes your experiences, and your cognition and all of these things. I think that you have an inbuilt personality, an inbuilt sort of self, an essence that exists separately and a priori to any physical or external thing. And I think that underlying inbuilt personality and essence is what puts the lens, is what gives you the lenses that you look at everything through. And then you as you go through life, you take in perceptions and you interpret those and you do sort of integrate them into how you behave. But the the you, the thing underneath it, the consciousness, the essence, the personality, exists underneath and is doing the interpreting. And that does compound over time as you interpret, but it has to start from the you and not from the interpreting.
Okay.
I think a different person, given all my same experiences, would still be a different person, because there's a different essence, there's a different entity in there doing the interpreting of all the experiences. So they look at it with a different lens.
How different would you be right now versus your consciousness in my body and my experiences? How different would those two people be?
It depends on...
Because I feel like you can, like, for example, I have some traumatic event in my childhood and it gives me trust issues. That's going to be a big part of my personality.
These are all behavioral things, though, and how you respond to the traumatic stimulus, I think, will be a consequence of your inbuilt personality, at least in part.
Right. Okay. But that itself can be influenced. I think that keeps going down and down and down and down. I think that does reduce, because you could have underlying trust issues, and then someone you think you can trust betrays your trust again, and man, those trust issues just grow.
Right.
But that's one thing causing another to be even worse, right? So you have like a chain. There's like a causal chain there. Does that make sense?
Sure, but it has to have a beginning, and the beginning has to...
But I feel like that beginning keeps just reducing. I don't think you...
Well, I mean, at some point...
As any causal chain does.
It can only reduce insofar... It can only reduce ultimately to conception. It cannot reduce farther than that.
Is conception an experience?
But, like, if you're gonna... That's the absolute bottom of the pool. And it could be argued that it starts after that the bottom is higher than that.
I don't think a conception is part of your consciousness, though.
I'm not saying it is, but
I think, yes. So
if it's not, then the bottom is even higher.
Causal chain of reasoning as to your personality.
Right, but it has a beginning necessarily, because you have a beginning.
It has a mechanistic beginning. I'm talking about emotion. We're flipping sides. I'm talking about emotional beginning.
Well, right, and so I'm saying, like, you, the things that make you, we're basically debating nature and nurture. And the things that make you, and you're saying that it's sort of reciprocal, and it's a sort of feedback loop, and you respond to your stimuli, and that then influences your personality, and then that influences how you respond to your stimuli, which influence your personality, which then it goes back and forth. And like, fair enough, we'll roll with that. I'm not sure I agree with it, but we'll roll with that for now.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, well, which side does the feedback loop start on? Does it start on nature or nurture? And I'm positing that it starts on nature. And right now you're positing that it doesn't start. And I don't think you can do that, because you start. And so the loop has to start somewhere.
Sure.
The thing that makes you has to either come from an initial experience or a fundamental personality.
So basically, I'm talking about the baseline. That's what I'm coining that. The baseline.
Okay. The baseline.
You're saying that the personality in my framework would be part of your baseline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the person that I am just undergirds all my stuff.
Okay, then I think that does fit my model, but I would say that everyone's personality, if defined like that, would be the exact, well, not the exact same, but it would be defined by whatever evolutionary pattern they have for their baseline.
Well, and as a qualifier, I don't know this for sure, but I think that even people who get like severe Alzheimer's or amnesia or whatever and forget all of everything that they know will still sort of have roughly the same behavioral patterns and dispositions. They'll still, like, and I don't mean to say behavioral patterns in the way that we've been using behavioral patterns until now.
Gotcha.
I mean in the sense of like just their level of their level of disagreeableness or assertiveness, and these aren't exactly right either, because these are, I don't know how to characterize the foundational thing. It's underneath all this stuff, but it's there,
bringing up,
and you can see it working.
Right. If you're bringing up Alzheimer's, I don't think you're ever fully gone, per se.
Let's go.
So that's why I think there are those distinctions, right? Like someone could have been the nicest person their entire life and someone could have been very irritable. And that irritability is going to carry on even if they forget like 90% of what they know.
Okay.
So that'll still shine through, but it's just because I don't think Alzheimer's can... I think it's imperfect in how it consumes your mind.
That is a cool sentence. That is a really cool sentence.
I don't think it'll fully consume you ever until obviously you can't function anymore, in which case it does usually.
What about amnesia?
Amnesia. I don't know if I've ever fully understood what amnesia actually is. I think I've conflated amnesia and insomnia, which are two very different things.
Yes,
just run me
different.
through briefly because I don't know if I would be able to. I want to make sure I'm on board.
I don't know. You get like hit in the head and forget everything. I feel like usually ammunition. I feel like usually amnesia only goes back so far. Like you'll remember up to a certain point, like from your childhood or whatever, but then forget everything between then and the present. But not always. I think there are cases of amnesia where you just forget everything, all of the things that you know.
Well,
I don't know if you can still speak necessarily with the most severe cases of amnesia. We're very far out of my element.
We
here.
can do a lot of
usually it
research
comes via trauma, like physical
like
trauma,
blunt force trauma.
Yeah, but I'm not positive about this either. Yeah, we are definitely out of my element here.
Yeah, this is.
But
stuff.
okay, so we can bring it back into the philosophy sphere though by just saying assume a hypothetical, a hypothetical disease or disorder or whatever amnesia is, that makes you forget everything that you know,
and all conclusions based off of your own perceptions. Right? Okay,
we did this.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, and that doesn't work because what I was trying to do with the amnesia was say that, well, people do forget everything that they know, and they are still more or less the same person under there, even if they've forgotten all the things that they know and think.
Right, but my idea is that you can't really do that and still be a...
Right. So maybe this claim is verifiable. Maybe we can...
Yeah, we could look into it. I think it'd be an interesting observation to go out and discover.
To observe. Indeed.
Perceive. Experience.
But
I think in the interest of time, we should absolutely get onto the cogito, which is an actual pretty like natural place to go from here.
I feel like we would have segued there.
So we have tried,
bring it around.
for just to preface, we have tried discussing the cogito
so real quick though,
multiple times.
Can I get a definition of identity from you? What makes you you? What are you? What are you?
A collection of... So I think I should specify, I think I am changing at every instant. The me 1 nanosecond later is not the same me as me now. Weird wording. I don't know. You get the idea. Yes. So I think I think you can define it if you take a snapshot image of what I am. I think then I can technically be defined. But I don't think if you're calling me, defining me as, then I don't think it, you cannot quantify what I am. Which sounds crazy, but I sound like a crazy person right now, but like seriously. I don't think any one person is actually quantifiable.
I'm with you. And this is a view that has been put forward. There's like a label for this. I can't remember what it is, which is bugging me, but
so if I was going to try and make an identity claim for myself, then I could, appeal to certain forms and ideas that I take on and whatnot. But those are generally based off of of my own experiences and what conclusions I've made based off of my own experiences. So I think my identity is my conscious.
And I'm inclined to agree with you on that. It's just that we're identifying consciousness. Well, so then wait, but you can't. Well, the thing.
But I can't define consciousness, but I also can't define myself. So I think they are the same, but they're both undefinable.
I mean, if we're defining if we're defining consciousness as, if we're identifying consciousness as the thing that experiences, and you are the thing that experiences, like, I guess the only difference between identity and consciousness would be that the identity is your particular consciousness, and consciousness just refers to the general. But I agree that they're the same thing.
Cool.
I wish I could remember what that view is called. I know what I hold is the simple view of identity, simple view of personality. The simple view.
I think I know
and
what
you
you're
have is
talking
the
about.
complex view, and I think one branch, maybe this is what I was thinking of before, maybe one branch of the complex view is the animalistic, the human animalistic
Possibly.
thing, and
That
the
would
other
make sense.
side is maybe this sort of reciprocal thing, but I can't remember.
I think I know what term you're talking about, and it's something existentialism. I don't remember what it is though. Yeah, because I looked into that because I was curious about it. But yeah, I don't remember exactly what term it is.
It's been a while. Anyway, okay, cool. Now Cogito.
Cool. So again, I said it before, but just to preface, we have tried like walking through the Cogito multiple times, and it usually just
devolves.
Yes, it usually devolves very quickly into like a, but you exist. But I'm like, but how do I know I exist? Because you just said you know you exist. And this yes. happens a lot. So we'll try and avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, let's do that again.
Yeah. But generally, I don't know if you wanted to give like a brief
for
description of what
for
Cogito
those that
is.
don't know, the Cogito argument is, this is Descartes. Yes, I'm very tired. Okay.
Wait. Yes, Descartes. René Descartes.
This is Descartes. So he was writing a book. I don't remember what it's called. And the idea that he went into the writing with was, what can I not doubt? Just going in, questioning all foundation, all assumptions, all axioms, all portions of understanding, and inspecting them to see what can really truly be known and what can't, and going a step farther than just what can be known, but what could not even conceptually be doubted. And he spends the whole book going over all of the things that can be doubted, and his experience and sort of existential crisis in finding that everything really can be doubted and questioned and whatnot. And then his ultimate grounding and stumbling upon the Cogito argument, which comes from the Latin words of the argument that are used, which I also don't remember.
I believe it's cogito ergo sum, I think.
Sure.
I think that's the original thing. But,
which means I think, therefore I am, which is one of the most commonly thrown around philosophical phrases ever.
Yeah, it's like the most famous philosophical phrase probably.
Yeah. And which is what he landed on as the one thing, the only thing that cannot be doubted. And I think that holds. I think this is a valid argument. A sound argument even.
Gotcha.
And he does not.
I believe it's a circular argument.
Because you think it's founded on an assumption, and I just
think it has to be.
I don't think I think functionally you can't doubt it. I don't think there's a way that you can, because there's no way.
Because I'm doubting it, and we'll get to that. Let me explain it though. Like even if you're looking at it as a conditional, you're saying, "I think, therefore I am." That "I am" is implied in the "I think."
If I think, then I am.
Yeah. But then you don't even have to make the conclusion that I am, because you saying I think is already saying that you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I'm with you.
I think
it's a logical consequence, it's not as much a conditional as it is an analytical consequence or even a tautological consequence of the initial statement. Like if your premise is I think, then you can deduce from a tautological consequence, I am.
That you are, yes. And it'd be what is that called? Subtraction? Logical subtraction or something like that. Because I think, but again, that implies that you'd have to believe that I think is true.
Right, but there's no way to not, because you do think. If you think that it's not true, then you think that it's not true.
Exactly. And this is where we get stuck every time, because we basically are working through a circular argument every time we try and argue this. It is literally a manifestation of its own circular nature, which I have a good way. This is the best way I could describe why I believe it to be a circular argument. If I said language exists, right? Is that true?
Yes.
But I had to use language to say and convey the idea that language exists. So it's me saying language exists is dependent on language existing. Does that make sense? And I think you can kind of conflate that.
Okay,
it's not
sure.
a perfect metaphor, but I think...
Fair enough, and I get what you're saying. Here's the distinction that makes that argument not necessarily valid, or not necessarily sound. Well, this one is.
Mm-hmm.
You are not language.
Sure. Right, but I don't think that I'm any more special than language.
But, as we laid out in the previous sections, your identity, your consciousness, necessarily exists because you experience. It's not, I wouldn't even, I think we can go a step back from I think, therefore I am, and just say I experience, therefore I am. Because if consciousness is the thing that experiences, and you are necessarily experiencing something, I can't prove this.
I don't think I am necessarily experiencing something, though. I don't think you can just make that assumption.
It's not an assumption. I am experiencing.
Well, yeah, you yourself believe that. It's a personal truth.
I know it. That belief is an experience. If you believe something, you are experiencing the belief.
I mean, yes, sure, but you need a vessel to believe. Whether that's your consciousness, whether that's your brain, whatever you decide.
Right, and so all that implies is that there is necessarily a vessel because there is a belief.
But you don't know there's a belief because
in order to know that
there's a belief, you have to say that you exist.
But there is a belief, clearly. You know from your experience because you are experiencing the belief.
Sure, but I think a belief can exist outside of consciousness.
What?
You could believe in knowledge. Well, no. You could, okay, so it depends on what you're saying by belief. It depends on what you mean by belief.
What do you mean by belief?
I was going to say, for example, an AI model, right?
Uh-huh.
Does it believe that 1 + 1 = 2?
No.
Okay. I agree. But I also
don't know why.
Because I think beliefs are...
Well, because it doesn't
if I was going to define
why.
beliefs, I would say that they're personal truths that you deduce from...
I don't think there's any
perception.
Such thing as a personal truth. I think there is just truth.
Right. But I could say that eggs are bad. And you could say eggs are good.
Right, and one of us... And you would believe your thing, and I would believe my thing, but one of us is right.
Right, but I know that they're bad. I like eggs, but but I could believe that they were bad.
Well, and this is the distinction between belief and knowledge, right? Because knowledge is justified true belief. So you have tasted eggs, they have tasted bad. So you believe that eggs are bad. You have justification for this belief because it tasted bad to you. But eggs are actually good and your tastes are just whack. And so
I agree with that because I'm playing devil's advocate with not liking eggs.
Right. And so in this hypothetical where you don't like eggs, you believe it to be true, but you don't know it to be true because it's actually false.
But how do you know
2
that's
out
false?
of the 3 because and I don't for sure. But it is either true or false. We just can't say for sure which it is. Eggs are either good or bad. We just don't know for sure which it is.
But then the whole idea of a truth is completely non-practical. And you have to assume personal truths.
Eggs
exist.
Because
a universal...
So they must be good.
Right, but
because being and goodness are the same thing.
Yes, but eggs existing is dependent on your own perception. In order to conclude a personal truth that eggs exist.
But then it's not a personal truth. You're either right or wrong about eggs existing.
Which I honestly... Okay, so Yeah, I do think eggs
Like-
exist without consciousness. Well, actually, no, they couldn't because it's from chickens. But say
Well,
and I
what
think
if
the
there
chickens,
were-
to an extent, have a consciousness. But
what if the first life form were an egg?
so you're okay. So you're asking if like single
Is there
cellular
consciousness
organisms have
inside
consciousness?
the egg?
See, this is the problem.
People are gonna think we're
Every-
high. We're not.
We're
I
not,
promise.
yeah, we
I don't
should-
do that.
Yeah, we should preface we're not. But
We
this
should
just
preface.
this happens. This happens every time we try and discuss the Cogito argument. It's like
This does not happen yet.
Well,
this
we
is a
haven't-
new one.
well, the whole egg spiel. Yeah, probably
This
not.
is a new and more frivolous one, and I'm enjoying it. But anyway,
Yeah.
whatever you assume to be, we've kind of drifted onto my last thing actually, which
Mhm.
is reality question mark. But the but back to the Cogito, it's just it like I can't prove that you exist because I can't prove that you experience. That's why. Excuse me. That's why it's not one that thinks. Well, no, one that thinks therefore is would work. But that's why it's not. We all collectively, us group of more than one person, think and therefore are.
Right.
That's why that's not the argument, among other reasons. It's only I think, therefore I am, because I only experience my own experiences. I can't experience you experiencing something, but I can't trust the efficacy of that experience, right? Because of the thought demon or whatever.
The evil demon.
Yes.
Not the thought demon.
Succubus,
again-
if you will.
I wanted to say this. Does that not mean that there are individual truths? Don't you have an individual truth that you exist?
Define individual truth.
Like, because you're saying that the Cogito argument applies just to you.
I'm saying that you can only know that it's true.
But is it actually true?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Necessarily, I exist because I experience my existence.
right. I say the same thing. Am I wrong?
What?
If
No.
I say the same thing, am I wrong?
I believe you to be right, but it's possible that this is all a simulation. I'm the only person that exists, and you're just saying that in my head.
Right. And
But then you would be wrong. But
Sure.
I'm assuming that that's not the case. I'm assuming that reality is not a simulation. I'm assuming that this world is all real
right.
and that you do exist.
Mhm.
And then if that's true, if that assumption is correct, and then you make the argument,
Yeah.
then you're correct. Then it is true.
Yeah. Okay, so but that truth you can only rely on it. The only true thing you can rely on is the Cogito argument in respect to yourself.
The only thing that you can prove to yourself is the Cogito.
Prove to yourself or prove?
To yourself. I can't prove to you that I exist because you can't
But
experience
it's a
my
personal
experience.
proof, which means it's a personal truth.
My problem with I don't think that's true. I think that
And if you're the only person who holds the truth, then you are God.
well, no, because God also holds the truth.
But how do you know that?
Because I've experienced God, but we don't need
But
to.
if God's the beholder of the truth and you know this to be necessarily true, how does that follow?
God isn't the beholder of truth. God is truth. By exposing myself to truth, I am becoming more familiar with God.
Okay, so it's like a reflection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
But is that reflection truth?
So, I mean, worldly.
Or is it like the good versus the capital G good versus little or lowercase g good,
Little
capital
g.
T truth, lowercase t truth? And is that lowercase t truth kind of just a personal truth?
I actually don't know that true. I mean, like, lowercase g good, I think, is just something that we've been using for colloquial convenience. I don't know that. I don't think I would actually posit that it exists. I think only capital G good is actually good, and everything else is just bad, but some of it's less bad.
Okay.
Because bad is just not good. And so anything less than capital G good is a little bit bad.
Right.
And so lowercase g doesn't actually exist. I'm not positing as I'm not making it as an actual existential claim. I'm just using it for convenience. And I don't think that it works for truth just because I don't think it conveniences us in any way. I don't think there are things that are, I don't know. I guess some things are closer to being true than other things. I am closer to being a woman than I am to being a lizard. But so it's more true, but that doesn't make it lowercase t true that I'm a woman.
It's really just a distinction of absolutes.
False. I don't think there is a distinction between absolutes. I think all absolutes are God and are therefore the same thing.
Right, exactly. So
but also I don't think that anything that's
so
not
what
an
you're
absolute
perceiving
is
though,
the quality.
because you're not God, can't be truth itself. Because your perception would you say you're an imperfect being?
No, I right. And so every
is an imperfect being capable of understanding perfection?
No, because we're finite and perfection is infinite. So
how do you know that then how do you know that you exist as a truth, like an absolute truth, if you can't quantify an absolute truth? That's why I think it is much more reasonable to say that there are personal truths. Are the personal truths true? Then you can discuss what truth means, right? But personal truths, you can say like...
Well, so here's my problem with personal truth, is that it implies that there's something that's true for me and not true for you. And that just doesn't...
I think not being able to prove that you're a different person kind of implies that that is the case.
But it's not actually true that...
I'm not saying it's actually true. I'm saying it's like kind of, that's why I was conflating it to the capital G versus the lowercase g good, is because you have these things that aren't like objective. I don't think there is objective truth.
Which seems problematic, and we can get to that later maybe.
Right.
But like, I assume things and you assume things, and I guess, sure, given the limited nature of our perception and cognition, we can't absolutely understand anything or whatever. We can only know things by grace of God, I would say. I don't know how you reconcile that. I guess you assume that we can't know things, and that's why.
That's exactly what I say. This feeds into my reductionist arguments.
But I don't think that makes things... That makes some things true for me and some things not true for you, like the same thing, because we can't absolutely understand anything, we make assumptions necessarily, and these assumptions, like I could assume one thing and you could assume another thing, but then one of us is necessarily right and one of us is wrong. I can assume I exist and you can assume I don't exist, and one of us is right and one of us is wrong. It's either true or it's false. There's nothing personal about it. It's just how close we are in our assumptions to the truth.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. It is a little bit tough because, again, I don't think that there is necessarily an objective truth.
There must be.
Because
does anything exist?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Just like something. There is something that exists.
Sure. I can't know that. I think it's convenient to say yes. I think it's...
That's not a real answer.
I can't know. That's why I'm not giving a real answer, because I don't know.
Well, now we're back to the cogito argument, because yes, you do, and you know it because you're experiencing, and whatever you are and whatever the experience is, there is a you and there is an experience. And so something exists because an experience exists and you exist in some way, shape, or form. You could be wrong about every single variable in that, but necessarily there's a you that is wrong.
Sure. Okay. So, I would say that I think I can conclude that things exist if I assume I am.
But how can you not assume that you are? It's not an assumption. You just know that you are because you experience.
I don't know that I am. I don't think it's possible to know that you are.
Right? How do you justify that claim?
There is no justification. It's impossible to justify.
The claim that you don't know that you exist?
I can't say that I do or don't.
You just did say that you don't.
I know, because I have to,
Oh, no. Not that you do or don't exist, but that you do or don't know that you exist. You said that you don't know that you exist. You said that you know that you don't exist.
No, I didn't. I just say I know that I don't exist.
You're right.
I don't know whether I exist or not, in truth. Because again, evil demon could be tricking everything I know.
Sure, but then there's still an I that is knowing. And you're just, like, if you're wrong about something, then there's a thing that's being wrong about stuff, you know?
Sure. And
the
again,
evil demon doesn't get around you existing. It just means that the things that you're perceiving are...
Sure, and again, but that's under the assumption
wrong about
that I am. Like, I explained it in logical terms, why the cogito argument is, like, I feel like very obviously circular. The whole reliance on I am being a point, like, because you have to exist in order to think.
Fair enough. It's nested in the premise. I don't disagree with you on that. But the thing is that you do necessarily, like, you do think. You can't not think.
How do I know?
Because you are experiencing the thoughts.
I mean, sure.
You can't not experience your thoughts.
From a determinist point of view, that gets a little bit hairy.
I don't think it does. There's still a you that's experiencing the thoughts, even if the thoughts are determined to occur by the way everything laid it out. You're still experiencing.
That idea of what you are is kind of just an abstraction.
Sure, whatever you are, whatever the thoughts are, you're experiencing them. There's something that is experiencing the thoughts that you're experiencing.
So how deep does that go, though? Because if it's an abstraction, then what parts of that abstraction do you derive that you exist from? Because can a planet derive that it exists?
Well, a planet can't think.
Exactly. Okay.
But you can think.
This is a difference of how we define consciousness.
Do you think a planet is conscious?
No. Well, intuitively, no. But it contains consciousness. But I think life is interesting. The idea of life.
Life is interesting. It is, absolutely. This is one of the great mysteries, is life and consciousness fundamentally. Two of the great mysteries, even. But I
don't think I could place consciousness on anything, then.
In what how could you possibly not exist? How can you reason that?
I can't.
How can you, because you're saying you can't know whether you exist or not. And I'm saying, by what manner could you possibly not exist?
There's no objective way that I could know that I exist, because everything that I am experiencing can be doubted.
But the things that you're experiencing aren't what your existence is stringent upon. It's rather only dependent on the experience. You can be wrong about the experiences can be false. You could even be, the experiences could not be real. They could be simulated experiences, but still, you know that you experience them. You process information. You are sensing and responding to stimuli. And that sensing and responding has to exist somewhere, because you're experiencing it. You actively are engaged in that. There's no getting around the you underneath the experience. And there's necessarily an experience. I know from my own experience.
Right, because if I am thinking about the implications of a cogito argument, it is me thinking of the implications. I can't escape that. I can't escape myself. Right? So obviously anything I say, anything I think, anything I do is going to be in context with myself. Mm-hmm. So because of that, I can't make an argument to say that I do exist, because my experiences already imply that I do. So it'd be reductionist, but it'd be subtractive, but you'd have to assume that you do exist to make any conclusions.
Sure, but you can't not assume that you exist. That's the argument.
Because I am the arbiter of making that claim.
Because you functionally must exist. Because you think. Like, in
right,
your
but I'm
domain.
the person who thinks I think.
Uh-huh.
So you can keep going down and down and down and down.
Sure, but
down.
There's always you, and you're always thinking. Whether you think, or whether you think, or whether you're thinking. There's always a you underneath it that is doing the initial thinking.
I don't think you can make that claim.
So if you don't exist, but you are experiencing, then what is experiencing?
I don't think you can make a conclusion about anything. I don't think you can make any conclusion that anything is experiencing from there. I think it's a very practical approach to say that, yes, you are probably I
think it's more
isolated
than practical. I think it's
body.
necessarily true. I don't see a possible way around
and I think, honestly,
existing.
From that discussion, I think what it boils down to is kind of just a difference of objective truth. I think that actually is the underlying disagreement that is kind of fueling that flame.
Even if I didn't believe in objective truth, I would still have to acknowledge that I exist. There's no way around it because I am acknowledging it. If I question if I say I don't exist, then I am saying I don't exist. There's no way around it.
You have to fundamentally doubt yourself.
Right, and
you have to doubt your own existence to conclude that you have to doubt your own existence to be able to make
the claim that you don't exist.
That you can't know you exist.
Sure, in which case you are doubting. There's a you that is doing the doubting. There's always a you that's experiencing.
Right, and this is a problem with language. I don't think this is a problem.
It's not just a linguistic thing, though, right? Language is derived from the physical. The reason that the language works out that way is because it's the case. There's no way that you could make the claim... Like, there's no way you could process the claim cognitively in a non-linguistic sense that wouldn't have a you at the bottom of the logical order of processes.
Exactly, but you're the person coming up with that conclusion. You're the actual person saying that there's no way you can do that. It relies on itself. It spans infinitely in both directions, but it relies on itself. So it's like a spiral going through space.
Let me revise the going through space was unnecessary. Let me revise my...
We're going to be stuck on this.
Let me revise my initial claim, because fair enough, I think it's fair that you can't necessarily say that it's like, or that you can't actually say that it's like a valid argument or a sound argument.
Mm-hmm.
Because fair enough, it doesn't follow like an actual functional deductive argument structure. But I think that it's actually truer than a valid or true argument. I think that, because again, yes, because we're breaking it. I like what we did at the start, where we broke it down into a derivation, into like a Fitch style proof, and you have like the premise is I am, and then you have like one conclusion, and
you're saying
conclusion
I am and I think therefore I am is basically what's
you
happening.
Only need one premise. The premise is I am, and then, the premise is I think, and then you have all that you need in that already, because the I think implies an I, and so then you can
so I think
you could do it with a conjunction elimination, or you could say I and think.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was kind of getting at. But I think,
or you could just do it as a logical consequence.
Saying I and saying I am are basically the same thing.
Sure. So you can reduce it out,
I,
and you can say,
you're kind of making the assumption that an I exists, in which case it's the exact same thing as saying I am. So basically, it's saying I am and I think therefore I am.
Necessarily nested in the premise is the conclusion.
Yes, which means yeah. I mean, the
premise is just necessarily true. I know that I think because I'm thinking.
And that just depends on how you
trust
your own perception.
It doesn't, because the trusting is thinking. You can distrust your own perception, and that action is a thought that's happening. The thought doesn't necessarily spring from the perception.
I think this is all happening inside of a closed system of which you define yourself to be. And I don't define myself. And that's why I don't assume a closed system. But you do assume a closed system.
You can't not assume a closed system. Because
because I am the person thinking of that idea. It's hard to escape, because I can't make a claim and say, well, you're making that claim, therefore you exist. Of course, yes, but I'm like disassociating from my own humanity here.
Sure, but then you're disassociating.
You see what happens here?
There's no way to get around the you.
Not. Yes, I understand that, but
and not just linguistically. There's no conceptual way to get around the you. There is a
but there's
thing
no
that is
conceptual
you
way
that is
to say that
experiencing.
you know it.
There is, because I am experiencing.
But that's
I
only
know
for
that I'm
you. It's not an
sure,
objective
there's no
truth.
way that you can prove it to other people.
It's not an objective truth.
It is. I know that it's objectively true. I can't prove to you that it's true, but that doesn't make it not true.
I don't think you can call that an objective truth.
Objective truth doesn't mean universally understandable truth, universally perceivable truth. It just means what is correct and what is not correct. There is like there's an actual reality. There are things that exist. There's at least one thing that exists, and it's me. Now, I think that tree exists, and I could be right about it, and I could be wrong about it. If I'm right, then it's objectively true that the tree exists. Like let's assume that the tree exists, just like in an objective sense. In this hypothetical, the tree objectively exists.
Yeah.
Now, I can assume that it exists, and I would be right, or I could assume that it doesn't exist, and I would be wrong. And let's say I assume that it exists, but I don't really have a reason for that. And I try to convince you that it exists just by saying, well, it exists because I know it exists. I know that that tree exists. Then I can't, prove it to you. I can't. We can even take this a step further. There is a tree that only I can see. It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it. I know it exists. I can touch it.
Yeah.
It's right there. And we'll assume for this hypothetical that it actually is. There's objectively, it is the case that there is an invisible tree right there that only I can see.
Sure.
Now, I can see it and I can touch it. You can't interact with or perceive this tree. I have no way of proving to you that there's a tree right there. I know it by my own experience, and it's true objectively because it is the case. It's in reality. There really is a tree that's right there that only I can see and interact with. I have no way of imparting this to you. You have no way of grasping this knowledge. You cannot know that that tree is there. But it's still objectively true that the tree is there because in reality, the tree is there. If there are no observers, there is still a tree there.
Mm-hmm.
Objective truth does not mean universally perceivable truth.
Sure. But on that framework, I don't know if you can assume that your own existence is necessarily true.
I think the existence is almost the same as the invisible tree. I know that it exists. I sense it. I perceive it. I can't prove it to you, but I'm experiencing, and so I know that there is a me that's experiencing. Now, I can't prove to you that I'm experiencing because you're not in here doing the experiencing with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I exist. And I know that it's objectively true that I exist because I'm here existing.
I get that. You're basically just saying the cogito argument again and again and again.
I am, because I don't get how you can even try to refute it. I get how you could refute it if I tried to prove that I exist that way to you, but that's not the claim. I'm trying to prove that you exist to you.
I'm not saying that, I don't exist. I think that's what you think.
Sure, but you're saying you could not exist.
Sure, yeah. And
I don't think you can.
I just don't think if you're speaking purely in logical form, you just can't, it's not a valid logical argument. And I think you've already
agreed.
Conceded that point, that it's just not a logical argument.
Yeah.
I think there's just a fundamental difference there. I don't think you can even get to the bottom of this. You can't
chalk this up to a fundamental difference. There's no way to assume that you don't exist. It doesn't work.
Right, because I'm the person who would always be doing the assuming.
Right. How are you getting around that conceptually? I literally don't understand it.
Because my brain works very logically, and I can't make a logical conclusion about anything. So if I can't make a logical conclusion about anything, I can't make any logical conclusions about myself, including my own existence. This is like the heart of the reductionist argument. It's a kind of absurd idea, but it
just doesn't. I understand that argument with everything that's not yourself.
I think you can have closed loops of, well, can you have closed loops of logic? Yes, the Cogito argument is a closed loop of logic. And I think you kind of assume these closed loops of logic that float around in the logic space in order to live your life as a functional human being. But I don't think you can make any claim to say that those are objectively true.
I agree with you, except, well, I don't entirely agree with you. But my general inclination in most cases is to actually agree with you. I kind of am sympathetic to your brand of reductionism in most cases. But the one thing that I don't think you can do that with is your own existence, because for the reasons we've laid out. I mean, it's difficult. You have to fully dissociate in order to do it. But I don't, there's a you that's dissociating. I don't. And that's not, you can't just write that off as linguistics, because there's still the process of dissociation is occurring in something, in some domain. And whatever that domain is what we've labeled you. We've agreed that it's consciousness, and that's an assumption. Fair enough. We can't say that for sure. We can't say that that's what consciousness is, or that, we can't even assume that I am separate from you necessarily. But we can. But there's a process happening, and the process has to happen in something.
Right. But yes, and I agree. But I don't think it's an objective truth. I think it would be a personal truth. Like, do I personally believe, as a personal truth belief, do I exist? Yeah, I think I would. I think I do, but I can't make any claim to say I do.
That has nothing to do with truth. That's just a belief.
Sure. I mean, exactly. So do I believe that I exist?
So personal truth just means belief.
Yeah. I think so, yeah. That's how I would say it.
Well, then just say belief. I don't like that term.
Yeah. So I can't say with certainty that I exist, but I can hold a personal truth that I do. Just like everything. That's how I operate my entire life.
Sure, but then you must acknowledge that you are either correct or incorrect in that belief. I mean, you don't have to acknowledge one or the other of them, but you have to acknowledge that you are either correct or incorrect. The belief is either right or wrong.
Doesn't have to be.
Do we agree that there is a reality of some sort? It may not be what we see, but there is a reality in which in which something exists.
I personally believe that, yes.
It's really irritating.
I know.
How can you not? Because and I guess I can't ground that without the Cogito, but I see no way, because the Cogito is the foundational knowledge of existence, right? Because if you know that you exist, which you do because you experience, then you know that there is a you, and you know that the you exists. Well, and you know that the you exists. And if you exist, then you must exist within some domain. And that domain is all of the things that exist, which is reality. And maybe all of the things that exist, maybe all of reality is you, and you're some sort of God, and all of your experience and all of reality is wrapped up in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I know this to be false, but I can't prove it to you. But sure, maybe that's the case, but there's still a you, and you still exist in a domain, and that domain is all of the things that are real, and that's what we call reality. And objective truth refers to what is and what is not the case in reality. It is either true or false that I am a god and all of the world fits in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I may believe that it's true. I would be wrong in that belief.
I may believe that it is true. Yeah, again, I think it, again, like I said, I wasn't wrong in saying that it's a difference in whether you believe objective truth exists or not. And I think the way I broke that down kind of shows that that is the case.
But you can't assume that you existing is necessarily objectively true. There's no.
I don't think you can say that.
I just did.
Well,
I'm kidding. But I just, there's no, you can't not exist. To me, you could not exist, but I can't not exist.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. There's no conceivable.
And that has been the Cogito argument, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't.
Yeah, I think we could go on for ages with this, and I think we should let this simmer a bit, but I don't think we'll ever get anywhere with it.
It's not like I'm trying to be pedantic or just like pick things apart or be clever or whatever.
No,
I really am not.
But
I really would love to understand how you are working around the I that's doing the assuming. I just don't. It bugs me because we've walked through it several times, and clearly there's an angle that you're looking at this from that I just cannot get in my sights.
I could say the same thing to you. I could say that it's remarkable that you're so convinced that your existence is objectively true.
I see literally no conceptual way that it could even be doubted.
And you see the same with me, but in the opposite direction.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, all right,
It's an interesting thing. We should let that simmer because I think there is a fundamental difference, and it is. I think we should probably wrap up.
Yeah, maybe someone will watch this and
yeah, maybe
and maybe they'll say something about it.
If someone is watching, I would love to see how exactly you can go about understanding that distinction or that difference in fundamental understanding, I suppose. Because again, I would love to see if this is something that other people have like openly talked about. I'm guessing there have been people that have gone through the exact same arguments that we both have. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But I think that'll probably do it for the first podcast.
Well,
are you still unsatisfied?
No, but do you want to do a goofy one real quick before we stop? A mini prompt, if you will.
Honestly, I think this is like a perfect roundup. I think this is good. Just because if we do a goofy one, we're going to get sidetracked. It's going to happen. We'll fail to our own namesake. So I honestly think that's pretty much a perfect stopping point.
All right.
But yeah, hopefully, if anyone is listening to this, you had a good time listening to it. I think that was a pretty solid discussion.
Quite so.
And I think it was fairly productive in a lot of respects. And we have a lot of homework to do now. So I suppose we will report back next week with the next topic.
Indeed.